The Deva said, Bahia, you're not enlightened. You don't even know the way to enlightenment. Bahia got quite upset at that and said, What? I don't know the way to enlightenment? Well, who does? Quickly, tell me. The Deva replied, The Buddha knows the way to enlightenment. Go and see him. Bahia inquired where the Buddha was. The Deva explained, and in the middle of the night, Bahia got up and started walking to find the Buddha. He arrived in the morning, found the house where the Buddha was staying, but the people said, We're sorry. You can't ask the Buddha anything right now. He's gone on alms round. Bahia said, I'll go and find him. The people said, No, no. Don't go. He doesn't answer questions when he's on alms round. But Bahia was not to be deterred. He was very anxious to find out how to become enlightened.
He ran after the Buddha and found him in the street walking on alms round. He prostrated and said, Sir, I want to ask you a question. The Buddha said, Bahia, you've come at the wrong time. Bahia asked again, and again he got the answer, You've come at the wrong time. Then he asked a third time, and the Buddha said, All right, Bahia. What do you want to know? Bahia said, I want to know how to become enlightened. The Buddha replied thus, To you Bahia, the seen is only the seen. The heard is only the heard. The cognized is only the cognized. Bahia thanked him and walked away.
In the afternoon, when the Buddha was walking with the monks, they found Bahia dead on the sidewalk. He had been killed by a runaway calf. The Buddha said, Bahia became enlightened before his death. Bahia had been practicing for 30 years, and surely in other lives before that, and could immediately understand what the Buddha meant with the instructions he gave. When we see something, there is only seeing. But we usually invent a story about the person or object and thereby either desire or dislike arises. The same goes for our other senses, including cognizing, the thinking process. All sense contacts are chemically neutral, including the thinking process, unless we start liking, desiring, disliking, or rejecting. Bahia understood this.
Now maybe we can understand and also practice. It's possible to do so under any circumstances. When somebody coughs, when the door bangs, when dogs bark, when there is movement, these are occasions to practice hearing only sound. When one sees a beautiful flower, just seeing without saying, I'm going to plant this in my garden, or, let me have it. I'll put it in a vase. Just seeing and recognizing the thought process that follows the sense contact. It is said about the arahants that calming their senses and letting go of desire gives them every power. This is power over oneself, where there's nothing to gain and nothing to lose. Calming the senses doesn't mean not using the senses, neither does it mean suppressing desire. It means recognizing the senses, through insight, for what they really are. When there is pain in the leg, for instance, know it as touch contact. From contact comes feeling, in this case unpleasant feeling. From feeling comes perception, this is pain. From perception comes the mental formation of, I don't like it. I've got to move. I've got to get away from this. Just as we want to escape from unpleasant sights or sounds, here we want to escape from an unpleasant feeling. This practice then means being aware and stopping the habitual reaction. As we calm our senses, our desires will lessen and with that some peacefulness will arise. Desires create restlessness and turmoil in the heart. The stronger the desire, the stronger the turmoil, especially if desire can't be gratified. Not getting what one wants is suffering. Calming the senses leads to peace.
Intelligent. It's interesting that intelligence should be one of the 15 conditions, because we often think people are either born with intelligence or without it. Obviously, that's not so. If anyone lies in bed for 3 months, they have to learn to walk again. If we don't use our minds, we have to learn to think. Intelligence must and can be cultivated by training the mind through meditation. If we don't meditate, it is very difficult to still the mind. The untrained mind goes wherever it wants, from happiness to unhappiness, from worry to fear, from elation to depression, from wanting to rejecting. A mind trained in meditation, can use its inherent capacity to think to the best advantage. It takes intelligence to understand the Buddha's teaching. An intelligent mind is an agile mind that can move, but with direction. It moves where it wants to go and can also expand. It isn't narrowly focused on its old and tried habits, customs, and traditions. It's expandable.
Not bold. The Buddha gave an interesting simile about men and women. He said, men are like crows strutting around, looking for their own advantage, and women are like creepers trying to find a tree for support. Both have to get rid of those qualities. The crow is an example of boldness. At our nunnery, the crows steal the cat's food. That's bold, isn't it? They go right into the hallway and take the food from under the cat's noses. Boldness is an exhibition of assertiveness. Self-confidence isn't the same as assertiveness. Self-confidence rests within one's own contentment, resulting in feeling secure. Then there's no need for aggressiveness. Nobody likes a person who is bold, asserts himself to the detriment of others like the crow does. But a self-confident person can stand on his or her own feet without fear, sure of his or her abilities and potential. There is no need to make others aware of these facts. That wouldn't bolster one's self-confidence, only one's ego.
Unswayed by the emotions of the crowd. If someone gets angry, we don't get angry with them. If someone gets sad, we don't get sad with them. If someone has a poor opinion of another person, we don't agree because it is interesting to talk about such things. We have our emotions under control. When we don't have our feelings of fear under control, we can experience panic. When we don't have our feelings of hate under control, we get riots. When we don't have our own emotions under control, we are swayed by others, which only results in gossip, slander, panic, riots, and war. To be unswayed by the emotions of the crowd, we must be in touch with our own feelings and trust them. We know when they are wholesome or unwholesome.
Abstaining from the ways that wise ones blame. That's the 15th condition and means not breaking the 5 precepts. 1. I undertake the way of training to refrain from killing living creatures. 2. I undertake the way of training to refrain from taking what is not given. 3. I undertake the way of training to refrain from wrong conduct as to sex. 4. I undertake the way of training to refrain from false speech. 5. I undertake the way of training to refrain from alcohol and intoxicants.
Anybody who has any sense would find breaking any of these precepts blameworthy. Getting angry and furious is also worthy of blame, and it's interesting to note how much people want to get rid of that. Not only because it's a fault, but because it feels terrible. Greed and desire are hardly ever criticized, yet both are equally destructive of spiritual growth. Both are mentioned here as part of the preparatory work toward feeling some real loving kindness toward others.
We don't have to go anywhere to ask anyone's opinion. We each have a conscience, which tells us quite clearly what is blameworthy. But we also rationalize, yes, but I had to do it because, and then we have a list of because she's so awful, because he doesn't let me, because they always say. We should stop at knowing, this is worthy of blame. To know a thought, speech, or action to be unwholesome is enough. Just knowing, because that will deter us from repeating the same act over and over again. We don't have to be upset at ourselves, saying, I'm awful. What is this terrible thing I'm thinking, saying, or doing? That's not loving kindness. We ourselves are also included in loving kindness.
There is no rationalization, no justification. Our behavior skills are just not perfected yet, and this gives us something to do, cultivating this skill. These are the 15 conditions that are preliminary factors in cultivating feeling for others. Only in the next stanzas does the Buddha talk about loving other beings. The discourse continues with, and this the thought that one should always hold, may beings all live happily and safely, and may their hearts rejoice within themselves. If we were to hold this thought always, we would never have any negative thoughts for anyone.
Then the discourse goes on to list various kinds of beings. Whatever there may be with breath of life, whether they be frail or very strong, without exception, be they long or short or middle-sized, or be they big or small. or thick, or visible, or invisible. Or whether they dwell far or they dwell near, those that are here, those seeking to exist.
Our loving thoughts should go to all beings, whether alive or seeking rebirth, human or animal, whatever size or form, seen or unseen, in any realm, excluding none. We can only see animals and people, but that doesn't mean they are the only beings in existence. Just because our eyesight does not allow us to see anything else doesn't mean there is nothing more. Bees, for instance, can see ultraviolet light, yet we cannot. Dogs can hear sounds so high-pitched that we can't discern them. What may be invisible or inaudible to us still exists.
May beings all rejoice within themselves. We think that all beings should live in harmony and happiness. We learn never to harm any of them, which means that we have consideration for others. Harmlessness lies with our intentions. May beings all live happily and safely, and may their hearts rejoice within themselves. If we remember to think in this way, there will be peace and security within ourselves and within those we meet. The next line says, "Let no one bring about another's ruin and not despise in any way or place." Let no one do anything to hurt another being. Even if an action is despicable, that doesn't mean we despise the person. The action may not have been wholesome, but there is the person's ignorance to be taken into account. If we despise the person, we make bad karma. It's enough that the other person is already doing that.